Hey everybody, this is Sami Al-AbdRabbuh. I'm on the top of South Sisters in Oregon, and I have a project. I want a mountaineer and a photographer who could do this. So basically, if you can come on August 21st, early morning, better camp up here and have your camera gear, there's a very nice, interesting thing that will happen. You will not see totality, total darkness of the eclipse right here, but here's the cool thing. The umbra, which is the shadow of the moon, will start all the way from the west, where it will start from the beach, and then it will go over Mary's Peak, which is just on the top of that point, and it will continue every single second with a supersonic speed going east. And here we have a great view with 7 of the famous mountains. So Jefferson at the top here, we have 2 sisters. They will not be shadowed, but then you have Finger Jack will be shadowed partially, and then Mount Jefferson will be shadowed completely. Mount Hood at the back, and the mountains back there, they will not be shadowed. So this is a great way to see the time lapse of the shadow going from the west all the way to the east, going departing Oregon in one view. So if you have a 360 camera or something like that where you can take that shot, please take that shot and share it with me.
Live from KBVR Corvallis, this is July 31st, 2017, and you're listening to Chariots of Curiosity with Sami Al-AbdRabbuh. Chariots of Curiosity, this show is for you if you are a curious being, a wanderer, a questioning child of any age. This show is not only for those who have been diagnosed with what I call passionate curiosity syndrome. It is for you, for everyone. Welcome everyone to Chariots of Curiosity, and I am your host, Sami Al-AbdRabbuh. I am so excited for this new episode on KBVR Corvallis. So today we have a special episode. I am so fortunate to have a distinguished guest on the phone today, and we're going to chat with him live about a very interesting topic. Before going there, I just want to share a journey or an experience I have been through yesterday. I went to South Sister Summit, which is the second summit second highest summit in Oregon, and it's just beautiful, spectacular. This is not the first time I do that. I have summited South Sister once before. But when I reached the summit, I got only 5 minutes before it turned out to be cloudy and I couldn't see the horizon anymore. It was beautiful back then. I barely saw maybe 3 or 4 mountains. But yesterday, it was a great view from the summit. I could see Mary's Peak, which is in the valley, Willamette Valley, and I could see the series of the Cascade Mountains, South Sister, Middle Sister, and also the South Sister, Middle Sister. I think the other one is North Sister. And also I was able to see Three Finger Jack Mountain, Mount Jefferson, and also on the horizon Mount Hood. And you can see from the distance Mount Adams, Rainier, and even St. Helen. So you can see all of these mountains just from one eyesight. It's beautiful. I'm going to share a picture on Facebook, Chariots of Curiosity. You should experience that, not only go there. And also I made a small video, and I made a request. I have a request for any mountaineer who's interested in doing this project. If you are a mountaineer who could climb easily with some camera gear, and you are a photographer who can take good videos or photography, I want you to go on August 21st, and in South Sister, unfortunately, you will not be able to see the totality. And for any reason that you don't want to be in the totality zone, and you want to be in South Sister, please have a 360 angle or 180 degrees angle camera or video and make a time lapse of the shadow of the moon as it enters from the horizon. You can see the Oregon coast barely, and then you can see Mary's Peak, and the shadow will move in a supersonic speed all the way to the east, from west to east, and you can see that shadow on August 21st, a circle or almost a circle moving in the horizon and covering the mountains. It will be beautiful. Mount Jefferson will be totally dark, but other mountains north to it and south to it will be either partially dark or completely lit, and you'll have light in South Sister. So it will be just a beautiful experience. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to make it, but if you can make it happen, please take some photos and experience that. Now, without further ado, I want to introduce a guest with me. And my guest is a very great person to talk to today. And his name is, I'm so sorry if I butcher your name, but we have Chap Percival. Is that right, Chip? Chap Percival.
You have it. Chap Percival.
Chap Percival, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you, Sami.
Well, without further ado, I want to introduce you very shortly, but I am so fascinated. Thank you for being on the show. You are an astronomy educator. You traveled to see 5 eclipses on 4 continents and wrote a book. And I'm assuming when you say 5 eclipses, they're total eclipses. They're not really partial. You're not counting the partial ones.
Total eclipses.
All right. So he traveled for 5 total eclipses on 4 different continents. And your book is Go See the Eclipse and Take a Kid With You. You have a website about it. And also you have traveled all around the country speaking to individuals and groups about the eclipse. This summer, he went with his wife and they went on a travel for 66 days. For 11,400 miles road trip across the country. And you drove full length of the eclipse path from the Pacific to the Atlantic. And you had 3 goals. So we are so excited to hear about your topic, what kind of things that you went on to tell people about leaving your hometown in Florida. So tell us a little bit, what's your passion, Chap?
Well, as a teacher, I enjoy looking at the night sky, looking at the things in the heavens, and just wondering in awe at all the grand things that are out there. But I really get my get off on when I show someone else something that they have never seen before and see their reaction. And just to hear them exclaim and go, boy, that is so cool. I've never seen that before. That's the kind of thing that I get off on. And so I enjoy looking at the sky myself, but I enjoy even more showing it to other people and helping them to see how grand and exciting these kinds of things are. So when it comes to eclipses, there are a couple of things that are really important. For most people, this will be a once-in-a-lifetime event. And so that, to me, means you should really try and make an effort to go see it. And that may mean for some people traveling. People who live in Corvallis, they don't have to go anywhere except outside and on a clear day. Hopefully the 21st will be a clear day, and look up and you'll see the eclipse happening, and it will be very memorable, to say the least.
I'm so excited for that experience, and probably I'm going to be one of the ones who will not stay in Corvallis, and I'm going up to Mary's Peak. Do you think I'm doing an ill judgment by risking it and probably being trapped somewhere in the middle of the forest, hiking up to the peak?
The specific case, the individual cases, it's hard to say.
It's a personal decision, maybe, or
yeah, it's a personal decision. Yes, it really is. I have to travel. I live in Florida, but I'm going to be driving up to Tennessee to see it.
Wonderful.
But there are people coming from all over the world to see, because this eclipse is very unusual in a couple of ways. Number one, it goes from coast to coast, Pacific to Atlantic, like you mentioned. And the last eclipse that did that was in 1918. So this kind of eclipse, well, eclipses are not rare.
Yeah.
In any century, there are 67 total solar eclipses. That means that averages out to one every 18 months or so, somewhere on the world. But the last one in the fourth was 1979, and that one was visible in the Pacific Northwest. The last one east of the Mississippi for where I'm at was in 1970. And so most people alive today have not seen one unless they've traveled like me. And so when I've talked to people about these eclipses, here's what they remember. They say, I remember when I was in elementary or middle or junior high school or something, there was one of those eclipses, and our teachers got all excited, and they warned us not to look at the sun. And we made little pinhole devices, and we went outside and held them up, and we saw this little image, a crescent shape on a card that it was projecting. And that's what they remember when you talk about a solar eclipse.
Yeah.
Now, it's memorable because obviously they remember a lot of years, but the fact is that is not a total eclipse. And they are just so different. In the total eclipse, while it's only a couple of minutes, like in Corvallis, it only lasts a minute and 40 seconds right on OSU's campus.
That's right.
But that will be an amazing, amazing thing, and it will be so memorable. It will. It's just so hard to describe.
Wonderful. Well, that's what I'm really trying to tell people, and one of the important things we're going to talk about this in a little bit. But one of the important things that we need to tell people, we have to do all the safety measures and always look at the sun with a precaution, and you can't look into it directly. And the way that you use the precaution, there's some details about it. But during the solar eclipse, you can see the eclipse. We can't say the sun because it's totally hidden by the moon, but you can see whatever is going up there when it's dark completely fine.
We see the sun's atmosphere. We call it the corona or crown that's around the sun. If you have your eclipse glasses on when you're looking at the partial phase, that's a good thing, and you need to keep them on. But at the very last minute, when the last little piece of the sun pokes through a valley in the moon, you get a flash. It's sometimes referred to as the diamond ring. When that happens, that is announcing the start of totality. Take your shades off, your glasses off, because then you can look with your naked eye at the sun and cheer and yell, and it's going to be a real celebration. It's just an amazing thing. And you wait, and then when the sun peeks out from the other side after your minute and 40 seconds or whatever the time is for your location, then you just put your shades back on for the rest of the eclipse when you're looking at the sun. And that's how you keep your eyes safe.
Wonderful. Well, we have lots of things in common. First of all, we both nurture curiosity in people and enjoy seeing people nurturing their own curiosities and exploring their own curiosities. And also, we both travel the country, cross country. I did a couple of times for a solar car racing. I was a solar car racing driver at one time. And one last time I did it to interview people and hear their stories. But now it's really about you. And I see that you had 3 objectives for your travel, which is basically you traveled about 11,000 miles because you wanted to tell people 3 things or 3 goals. Could you tell us what were your 3 goals for that?
Sure thing. Yeah, everywhere I go, my goals are these. I want as many people as possible to see this eclipse.
Mm-hmm.
I want them to see it safely, and thirdly, I want them to see it with understanding. And there are some myths about eclipse watching. I think the most pernicious is when people say that looking at the eclipsed sun is more dangerous than just looking at the sun anytime. And I have had students tell me that during an eclipse, their parents made them go into their room and they closed the blinds and wouldn't even let them go outside during an eclipse so that they couldn't see it because they were so fearful.
Oh, that's sad.
Well, yeah, that's very unfortunate, and it's not necessary. And simple precautions can eliminate those kinds of problems. The glory of the eclipse is there are so many things that happen. The eclipse is a 3-hour-long event, approximately. You have about an hour and a half of partial eclipse. Your 2 minutes and 40 seconds, that's the maximum anywhere in the country, of totality, and then followed by another hour and a half of partial eclipse. And during the 2 minutes, the totality that you have, the transition, the sky gradually gets darker. You do what you were asking about, finding a photographer to go to the top of the mountain and photograph the moon. It comes rushing at you across the country, the landscape, if you have a clear view of the west. And as it comes, you look up and see that last little piece, the diamond ring. The sky gets about as dark as it does during dusk. The corona becomes visible. Stars come out. Temperature goes down. Animal behavior changes. Birds go to roost. Street lights will come on. It's just, and you look up in the sky, and it really does look like there is a black hole in the sky surrounded by these pearly white plumes radiating in a pattern that's unique for every eclipse. I just get chills even thinking about it. It's just amazing.
Wow. And I had some friends talking in the show about the experience, and they say it's the difference between seeing the solar eclipse and not seeing it is just like talking about dinner and having dinner, or seeing ice cream and having the ice cream.
Yeah, there's an element of truth to that. That's for sure.
Wow,
that's for sure.
And just to remind folks, Totality is a special case that you can see in a small strip. I think it's 80 miles radius. Is that right, or 60? I can't remember honestly. 70
miles wide or so. In Oregon, this is kind of the way we can't control this. Where the sun goes. But, for instance, the largest city in the state, Portland, is outside the path. Eugene is outside the path, but on the south side. But Salem, Corvallis, Monmouth, Albany, those are all inside the path of totality, right along I-5. I predicted the morning of the eclipse that I-5 will be very heavily traveled.
Wow, yeah. And
that's an easy prediction to make, though.
Oh yeah, and it's going to be heavily traveled. Some people say it might be blocked like a parking lot, which we hope does not happen because we want to give emergency vehicles a room to move around.
Right.
Yeah. Well, let me go on a tangent before we go to preparing and being ready and maybe the safety. I want to go on a tangent when you mentioned, and here's how my brain works. When you mentioned we cannot control that, and then you mentioned big cities, something happened in my mind and told me, what if we can control the eclipse? So I thought about the easiest thing to manipulate probably is the moon. So maybe we can move the moon around and direct it temporarily for one way or another, and we can have cities sponsor the totality. Okay, I know this is probably crazy. maybe it will never happen in the future, and maybe if it happens in the future, there's unintended consequences. What do you think about that crazy idea?
Well, I think there's something else that'll happen first before that. That'll happen way in the future if it happens at all. But what's going to happen sooner is, think about this, the moon is in orbit around the Earth all the time, and it's always casting a shadow. Mm-hmm. Whether, when it passes in front of the sun, we can see the effect, but the shadow's there all the time.
Right.
I predict that maybe within your lifetime that there will be space tourism, and there will be rockets that will be available to go and fly into the shadow of the moon wherever it is in orbit, and you can celebrate your birthday by seeing your own personal total solar eclipse.
Wow, that is amazing. You're much smarter than me. I thought that the moon is the easiest to move compared to the sun and the earth, but I forgot about humans.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So, it's great, and actually I think, and that's a very important thing, I think even if we have that, and even if someone's saying, okay, I'm going to wait until that happens and I'll buy my own shuttle, maybe someone from the Koch brothers, or I'm sorry, any person who's fortunate enough to afford a future solar eclipse in the space, we would still tell them, don't wait until then. Travel to the nearest town that will have a totality, because the sensory environment all around you in terms of street lights, animals,
absolutely.
Everything, the atmosphere, everything is a totally a special experience.
I have been following a lot of the special events that are being planned along the way. The largest city in the United States that's in the path of totality is Nashville, Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And the Nashville Zoo is going to have an activity. They're asking for volunteers to come, and they are going to observe animal behavior in all the different parts of the zoo and try and document some of the behaviors that occur during the eclipse when it happens there.
That's crazy. Well, I can see that this will be the most attended or watched or videotaped eclipse in our lifetime until 2024, because the material and the knowledge and the social impact that we will create through this total eclipse will be so huge that the next two, probably in South America and again in the States, I think in 2024, will create a huge momentum where people will be coming again for this one.
I'm sure of that. Yes, I agree, and it'll be interesting to see just how many. We call people who want to see more eclipses. They see one and they want to see another. We call those eclipse chasers, and I think this eclipse will produce a whole new generation of eclipse chasers.
Well, I don't know if I met you through a Facebook group for such type of folks, so I'm not sure if I'm categorically an eclipse chaser. I knew that Corvallis will have a total eclipse 5 years before I moved, 5 years ago when I moved in, so I'm not sure if that qualifies me as one.
Well, we'll see.
So
we'll see. Time will tell.
So let's shift gears. We'll have a short break, but then we want to shift gears in terms of precautions, what to plan. And one of the things I've been hearing around me in Corvallis, some people say, oh, this is an overrated event, and people are freaking out, quote unquote, freaking out about the precautions and how to plan for it. So some people are really underplaying what they hear in terms of precautions and measures we need to do. You have traveled 4 or 5 times, so you have some experience and knowledge what will happen, and maybe you can extrapolate your knowledge about different continents and to different sizes of towns and to what we should expect here in Corvallis and probably people in Nashville, Tennessee, and in between. Corvallis is a very small town for those who are hearing us outside. So how about that? Before that,
sounds good.
I'll give you 3 options to choose. Rod Stewart will play Fly Me to the Moon, or the Beatles, Here Comes the Sun, or Moon River, again with Rod Stewart.
Beatles, Here Comes the Sun.
All right, we'll be right back. Thank you, Chap. And we'll have the Beatles, Here Comes the Sun, and then we'll be right back.
just like the stars, just like the moon. You know I'll be there, hanging true. You can count on my love, just like the stars, just like the moon. Sometimes a dark cloud passing through and hide your point of view. Oh, and sometimes my love is hidden too. Oh, but as sure as the heavens are there, you know I ain't going nowhere. You can count on my love, just like the stars, just like the moon. It don't always show, but my love's always there, even when we disagree. And when that dark cloud passes through, you're gonna see that you can count on me, just like the stars, just like the moon. You know I'll be there, hanging true. You can count on my love, just like the stars, just like the moon. See that you can count on me, just like the stars, just like the moon. You know I'll be there, hanging true. You can count on my love, just like the stars, just like the moon. Yeah, you can count on my love, just like the stars, just like the moon, just like the moon.
And that was Just Like the Moon by Steve Hawley. Before that, we had The Sun with the Beatles. Here Comes the Sun. So you're listening to Chariots of Curiosity on KBVR Corvallis, 88.7 FM. Or you might be listening to us online on kbvr.com /listen. Today we have a great topic, and I have my guest Chap Percival on the show. Chap, welcome back, and this is really great. We've been talking so far about the eclipse and experiencing it. Chap traveled across the country for 66 days over the totality zone to really educate people about it and make sure that as many people as possible see the totality. Go ahead, Chap.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
Oh, yeah, no worries. I was just introducing what you were doing, and one of the goals that you wanted to people see it safely and with understanding. So let's start with safety.
Yeah.
If we want to choose maybe 4 or 5 of the most important things that we should remind our friends and family about with regard of the safety of viewing eclipse, what should we tell them?
Okay, there are 2 main methods to safely view the sun. One is called projection, and the other is through filtering. Projection is where you take a card or cardboard typically, poke a little hole in it, and hold it up so the sunlight is going through the hole and then projecting down onto a surface, can be a table, another card, and that little hole acts like a lens, and the image of the sun, if you did that tomorrow on a clear day, you would see a round circle of light on your little table or a card where you're projecting it.
Right.
That's the image of the sun. Now, during the eclipse, that shape is going to change. It'll gradually become a crescent shape. And the reason that this method is guaranteed 100% safe is because you're not actually looking at the sun at all. You're actually looking away from the sun at the image that's projected on the card. One of the best ways to see this effect, though, is during the eclipse, the partial phase. If you have a tree that's near you, go stand under the tree, and the splashes of light down underneath it will actually be the shape of the crescent sun, because each of those little splashes acts like a pinhole. So the pinhole is virtually guaranteed safe. But for a lot of people, it's not very satisfying because they know that what's going on is happening with the sun, and so they want to look at the sun. So to do that, you need to have a filter. Now, you have to have a filter which blocks 99.999% of the visible light. So that's a pretty heavy filter, and most people don't have those kind of filters available. Sunglasses are not that big, that thick. Other kinds of things. You have to have a filter that's really specially made for that. Now, there is a welding filter, welder's mask, and they're numbered on a scale that I don't quite understand, but number 13 and number 14 welder's glasses are safe to look at the sun through. Okay? So those might be available, but again, they're not widely available.
Yeah.
But because of this eclipse, a lot of companies have been making these, what we call Eclipse Shades, which are cardboard frames, but which have in the eyeglass portion material that is safe for viewing. Although there are some companies that I have heard that are manufacturing some that are not certified safe. And so the certificate, if you have or you have a pair, what you want to see are the letters ISO, these glasses meet the requirements of ISO, and there's a number here. It's 12312:2015. Or another certification is just the letter CE, certified by either the British or the Australian. In other words, there are standards And if you have glasses, shades that meet these standards, they are safe to look through to see the sun anytime, not just during the eclipse, but anytime.
Right.
Today, tomorrow.
Right. And these shades are must to use if you want to look at the sun at any point of time, except if you were lucky to be in the totality zone on August 21st, and only during the very limited time of totality when the sun goes dark and after the diamond ring and before the second diamond ring, that's where people can take out their shades.
That's when they can take them off and enjoy the sun, the corona of the sun in all its glory. Absolutely.
Perfect. Well, I want to ask you, Chap, about this. I'm kind of one of those who really plan for the worst. I'm doing my research in emergency management, and I want to think about what could go wrong. Have you seen any things go wrong during the eclipse? Not necessarily with the sun and the moon; they always line up together when you're expecting them to. But in terms of people, something that people do, I'm thinking about one aspect. Have you ever seen in your area someone in your area where you're watching the eclipse, someone who does not have a shade because they did not get their hands on one early enough?
Well, actually, the very first eclipse that I saw was in 1970. And yes, 1970, because I'm old. And in that one, eclipse shades were not widely available, if at all, at that point. And so we did not have, it was a more, well, you used what you had on hand. There were projection devices. Welders' glasses were a little bit more common back then, actually, and I remember using one of those glasses. But mostly the events that I've seen in the last 20 years, certainly, have all had have had eclipse shades.
Yeah.
And if you don't have eclipse shades, there are some possible techniques that, but they're available online, and you can look for eclipse safety online and find lots and lots and lots of information.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, most of, and if there aren't enough eclipse shades to go around, you may have to share some, but it's a small price to pay for, the totality. That's the big payoff. You have this hour and a half of tension and waiting, building up to this huge release. Diamond ring happens and totality occurs, and you don't need the glasses for that. And that's the big payoff.
That's wonderful. Well, any other safety things we should care about other than knowing that you have to see the sun either through projection or a filtration?
Well, there's personal safety. A couple of things. When I was in eastern Oregon, it's very dry, and there are concerns that were expressed that people would be coming from out of the area, not really knowing how to properly survive in that environment, and perhaps not bringing enough water to keep hydrated, or doing silly things that end up in accidents happening and traffic being such a mess that it's hard for first responders to get in.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of things. It's a celebration. This event is really a big deal, and there will be a lot of celebrating going on.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that at some point there will be some people who will do things that will either hurt themselves or maybe some other people along the way. And I hope that doesn't happen, but it just might. But personal safety, you want to make sure you have a chair so you can sit, because it's a 3-hour-long event, and you want to be comfortable. And you're looking up into the sky a good bunch of the time, so you, again, want to make sure you're comfortable, have snacks and other things. If you're with a crowd, I wouldn't be bringing along a boombox to play for other people imposing your particular brand of music on someone else. Natural, common courtesy would kind of dictate that. It depends on the individual circumstance, of course, and where you are located, how many people you have. But sometimes common sense, what we think is common sense isn't so common, right?
Yeah. So one of the things, should I bring more shades probably than what I need for my friends if I'm expecting to be in a big group of community with a big group of people, or what should I bring to get?
That's what I'm doing. I'm bringing along extra shades for the people. I know that I'll be at a location where there is a motel, and there will be a couple hundred people, and I don't know how many of them will have Eclipse Shades with them, so I'm taking along extra.
Wow.
And it's a small enough expense, and it's
worth it.
Cheap visual insurance. That's the way I look at it.
Wow, that's wonderful. That's really great. And by the way, you reminded me, 1999, I was living in Saudi Arabia, so Saudi Arabia was not seeing the total eclipse in August, I believe 9 or somewhere around that, 1999. And there was a totality, but it was partial. And I used a Kodak film, unprocessed Kodak film, which I have heard right now or these days that they do not recommend that. Is that right?
Well, the earliest memory that I have of seeing an eclipse was a partial eclipse when I was 6 years old, and my father enjoyed photography, and he had Kodak black and white film that he had exposed and completely developed, and it was black, and we used that to look. For short times, it's fine. The silver compounds do an adequate job of blocking most of the harmful rays.
Right.
It's not the kind of thing that you want to hold up there and look at continuously for the hour and a half of the partial eclipse. But if you're using it for, a few looks every now and then, they work just fine.
Wonderful.
But again, Kodak film is not that widely available anymore. Who uses film, right?
That's true. And actually, these days, the $2 or even $1.23 solar shades, approved solar shades, are much cheaper than a Kodak film. If you can get your hands on any. So probably my generation, and I'm 30, have something in common with yours, and it's not anymore available for these days. So that's great. So let's shift gears to social etiquette. One of the things I really want to enjoy this without loud music, and maybe without people shouting, but I'm kind of giving up on that. I will expect people to behave maybe not like I would think human behavior will be something to witness, not to be bothered by. But what about
Correct.
me? How should I behave?
Well, in my experience, when you have the transitional time, when you're going from the last little piece of partial through the diamond ring into totality, during that 30-second period or so, if you're with a group, the group is going to get boisterous. They're going to cheer. They're going to whistle. They're going to clap. And then when it finally becomes totality, naturally, in all the eclipses I've been to, it gets much quieter. Because people's jaws are dropped. It is so unusual. What they're looking at, they have never seen before, for the most part. And it is just so spectacular, such an unusual sight. And then they start to talk a little bit, but it's still more subdued. But when the second diamond ring happens, boy, the cheering, the yelling, the enthusiasm comes right back up. And so it's really an interesting thing to see. And for people who want to use their smartphones, the smartphone is not going to be good for taking pictures of the sun, of high-quality images of the sun. But what it is good for is capturing in the video mode the soundtrack. So if you have I got a selfie stick that has a removable holder that can be attached to a tripod. So I'm going to have my cell phone on a tripod sitting back, aimed at the group and running during totality so that it will capture the darkening of the sky and the soundtrack. The soundtrack really makes it worthwhile. You need to have the soundtrack. But I can just set that up and let it run during totality and not have to worry about it. But cell phones can be useful for one thing, but don't expect to get great pictures of the sun.
Okay, and I'm sorry to ask such a detailed question, but I think this is a good experience for me to have the angle. Should I have the back of the people with the sun in the view, or the front of the people?
Yes, that's what I do. You want to have the sun and the people in the foreground, so they're looking at the sun, so you will have their backs.
Nice.
Right.
Wow, and the sound of them cheering and doing all of this, all sorts of things.
Yep.
Of course, I have heard that if you ever use a flash, you will be in trouble, and make sure that you disable any flash that could go out of any camera you have.
Right, no flash.
Yeah.
Part of the reason is your eyes get adapted to darker light, and the eclipse, the partial phase, it's been getting darker much gradually than you think. And during totality, it's dark enough that if a flash fires, it destroys your dark adaptation for 10 or 15 seconds and is an unpleasant experience. So yes, please, if you have a flash and you're taking a still photo, turn the flash off. That's true.
That's great. Any other social etiquettes we should care about?
The golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, I think is just in general in life and for this event.
Yeah.
A good rule to follow.
Wonderful. And I heard bringing a chair is a great thing because the totality is very short. However, the eclipse experience, going to the place and being there and watching the partial eclipse before and after and waiting until the traffic goes out.
You absolutely, you want to be comfortable, and even the total eclipse, once the second diamond ring occurs and you're back into the partial phase, it's kind of anticlimactic. But odds are that if you were to rush and get in your car and drive away, that you would get stuck in traffic. So you're going to hang around for a while anyway. And you may have something to eat and a snack and already start to reminisce. One of the things that in this generation is a real concern is overusage of cell phones, because we're having in locations that are maybe used to handling a smaller amount of traffic, suddenly the amount of traffic is multiplied by 5 times or 10 times. So some communities have had cell towers on wheels brought in or are going to be brought in for that day to increase the capacity. Because of the demand that the phone companies anticipate put on phone service that day.
That makes me really wonder about people should really make sure that they rely that self-service might not be there. Whenever we have a graduation or Civil War game in our town, it's 55 or 50,000 capita. Sometimes we lose service around the stadium during that period of time, and probably people should expect that happening again in this town or small towns as well. Which is another thing. If you're traveling, it's a good idea to actually have paper maps instead of depending upon your GPS in the cell phone. It might
You want to have a backup for that.
Yes, or save your Google map on the offline, having an offline saved map on your Google Maps, but making sure also that they have power for that and they don't lose their cell phone power. So always have a plan B. Assume the worst and hope for the best. We're hoping for the best. But from your own experience, some things could go wrong just because there are many people there. I have a question for you, and I have heard some people are trying to think how to celebrate it. I have to make a disclaimer first. My question is, if someone is going to legally choose to drink or smoke marijuana, and they're both legal for those above 21, in Oregon. And just to make sure I make this clear, this is not an endorsement from me, neither from the station or Oregon State University, and all the opinions here actually are reflective of me and you, not the station. But if someone chooses to smoke or drink, would you have an advice for them? Yeah, do whatever you want to do, or maybe you better experience this while you're 100% sober?
Well, I know that one of the side effects of some of those is to cause the pupils of your eyes to dilate, which does two things. It lets in more light, but it also increases the distortion, the aberrations that are in your lens, and so the quality of the image that you will see will suffer. And so my recommendation is that you do any of that celebration after the eclipse, and that you want to have as clear a vision as possible for the eclipse itself.
All right, I'm going to abstain for a week, maybe, or two. Well, that's wonderful, and thank you so much. We're almost out of time. I couldn't even feel the time passing. So I want to close up by how people could really follow up with you and hear your stories, and maybe if we have some time to share one interesting or amazing story you went through. But first, how could people read your book or follow you on Facebook?
Okay, well, I have a website. It's called GoSeeTheEclipse.com. And there's a link to purchase the book there if they're interested. I have posted an excerpt chapter on my. If you go to Facebook, there's a page called "Go See the Eclipse," and there's information there and all those places. And I just created another page today, which is for reporting your experience after you see the eclipse. It's called Eclipse Day 2017 Report. And so when Eclipse Day comes, it'll be a common place where people can go and read all the different reports, because there's going to be reports coming from all over the country, hour by hour, throughout the day. Now, one of the things, my horror story, this is my horror story real quick. In 1972, I went to see my second eclipse in Canada. And beautiful sight, we got there 3 days ahead of time. It was clear the day we got there, clear the next day, clear the day before the eclipse. The morning of the eclipse, it was clear. The partial eclipse started and clouds appeared on the horizon. And by the time totality started, 2 minutes before totality, we were socked in. And that was the one of the five that I missed totality. So we didn't have smartphones, we didn't have apps, weather apps, and I would, if I'd have known, I could have moved 10 miles east and I would have seen the eclipse.
Wow!
So flexibility might be in order as well.
Wow. Do you know if the effect of clouds could, or the effect of the lunar shade or umbra's effect on cloud movement happens more likely in a mountain compared to a valley? Asking for a friend who lives in a valley and planning to go to a mountain.
The valleys tend to get clearer before the mountaintops.
Okay. So we might really have a better view from a valley.
Well, yes, because sometimes, mountaintops can have their own weather, and there'll be clouds lingering around the top of a tall mountain, whereas the valley will be clear. Now, that's not going to necessarily happen on Eclipse Day, but sometimes that's the case more often than not.
Wow. Well, Chap, I can't thank you enough. You're doing really great work by really spreading the joy and passion of astronomy and eclipses. You are an astronomy teacher. We did not say that. And you were just telling me that some of your students were messaging you and telling you, I'm going there just because you told me so. And I'm seeing it as a positive thing, that it was not an assignment that they will not pass without seeing it. No, they're passionate because of your passion. Is that right?
These are students, some of them that I had 20 years ago. So.
Oh wow! So no obligations or attachments. They're doing it on their free will.
Correct.
Well, thank you so much. You're doing so great, and I'm so lucky to have you on this show. You have seen too many eclipses, and you're spreading the joy and the passion for that. Thank you so much. Do you have any final words that you want to share with our audience?
Well, the famous or the typical greeting or farewell that astronomers have, and that is to wish you clear skies.
Well, to clear skies. Thank you, Chap. That was Chap Percival from Florida, and on the phone. And that was Chariots of Curiosity. We wish you clear skies in August 21st. Be careful about the heat that's coming to Corvallis. So we wish you that you make sure that you're doing your precautions, hydrate yourself, and have enough food and water and everything you might need on August 21st as well. Chap, thank you so much again. And that was our show. That was Sami Al-AbdRabbuh signing out. But before that, I'm going to send you with Yellow Moon, played by the Neville brothers. Other than that, have a great rest of your day. We'll see you next Monday.